I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist with degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy, and a national certification in integrative mental health. In this video, I'm not looking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sunday. Yay. Oh, hair growing out. Keep it out of my face. Okay, let's say hi to people. Hey, Adric, thank you for being here. Hi, Nina. Thank you for being here. Snowman is batting third. He's going to load the bases. Oh, he's going to hit the air later. So if you guys haven't checked out his channel and you're into sports, go check out Snowman. Subscribe to his channel, even if you're not into sports. It's just a click of a button. Hi, Adrian. Thanks for being here. He says, let's go. All right. Who else is here? Hi, Rocky. Thank you for being here. Yeah, he's part of the live gang. Yeah, this is the live tribe. They're in here. Hi, Nick. Thanks for being here. He says beautiful music. Yeah, it is, isn't it? It makes me want to dance, right? Okay. So we're here and we're going to talk about AI, right? And how it affects our identity as human beings, right? Because it's sort of like as it's becoming more accessible, like to regular people, um, and it's really good at imitating human thought patterns, human cognition. It's kind of creating this crisis of consciousness. Like some people think like, oh, it's going to take over. And then some people are like, oh, it's just going to help us. So I kind of want to start with some definitions, which means I'm going to have visuals today, just so that we have them. Hopefully you can see it because I put a ton of information on each slide to try to keep it manageable. All right, so what is AI? Now, here's where we start having problems right away because there are multiple definitions. Like nobody can even like define it. Again, notes in front of me. So when you see me look down, it's because that's where my notes are so that I stay on track. All right. So Britannica of Encyclopedia Britannica, right, says it's the ability of a digital computer or computer controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. Okay. IBM, who's front runners of this, says technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. That one's a little deeper. Wikipedia says the ability of systems to synthesize information as the manifestation of intelligence. All right. And the Oxford Dictionary says the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. So all of them are a little bit different. And I mean, to me, it's already an issue when we can't even define what is artificial intelligence. Hi, Cynical Optimist. Thanks for being here. All right. So we've got those definitions out of the way, right? So let's look at what is human identity, right? Because that's kind of important. We kind of just think, well, it's just being a human. But how do you differentiate between being a human and anything else, especially when we're talking about something that imitates being a human? Okay. Like we kind of have to differentiate, like, how are we different then? Sorry, I'm trying to see the comments as I talk. All right. So, what is human identity? The things that are specific and exclusive to being human and having a conscience. Okay. Consciousness, we'll say. So, the first one is being self aware. Like, I know I'm a human being, right? So, humans have this distinct level of self-awareness and consciousness. Like we know we have a consciousness. The consciousness lets us think about our thinking, like reflect on our own thinking, reflect on our own thoughts, our own feelings, our existence. Sorry if you guys can hear the mower that's going outside. Apparently both of my neighbors decided to mow at the same time. So sorry if you guys can hear that, but this specific ability to be able to be introspective and understand ourselves, like have an idea of self, makes us distinctly human. Okay. Language and communication, that's another one. We can use complex languages, which is a part of our human identity. Now, you ask biologists, and there are some animals that have very distinct language and communication systems, dolphins being one. But we can use complex language. It allows us to like share our experience, to actually communicate about our self-awareness, right? It lets us Adrian says the mowing is a CIA plot to interrupt your messaging. You know what's so funny is that Pivot Point Wednesday is about, part of it is about the CIA. So they're prepping. They knew what I was thinking. All right, language. Okay. So we can make abstract thoughts, like we can philosophize, we can theorize using communication, right? This is what helps us to form like complex societal structures, which is both a blessing and a curse, I would think. It helps us to pass down knowledge. Think about how knowledge was passed before written language, right? There was the people whose job it was to know the stories, and they weren't allowed to embellish, and they weren't allowed to change a single word, because that's how you get the telephone game, right? Like they had to memorize knowledge that was held down. Just as an example, the Druids. Okay, so let's bring up the Druids. The Druids, it took 27 years. So when you sort of became a student, right, to learn all the things, one of the things is being a bard. And a bard would know all the stories, and it was set to song. So it was sort of rhythmic, it was poetic, it could be played with music. So when you were a bard, you had to know all these songs without changing a single word, or a single tune, nothing, because this is how information was passed. Okay. Which was really helpful when people were trying to like kill all the Druids, that you had people that just went around and sang songs. So after the Druids were supposedly gone, then they would call people who went around and sang songs, like at pubs and stuff, they called them the bards. And they were always stories. The songs they sang were always stories. So this is how we are distinctly human, I guess, complex language, right? The next one is moral and ethical reasoning. So we actually think about the morality and the ethics of our behaviors and what we do. Hi, Leon. Thanks for being here. He's offering everyone Jell-O. Put your favorite flavor of Jell-O in the chat so Leon can do that. Actually, he's just saying hello. All right, but you can still tell me your favorite flavor of Jell-O. All right, moral and ethical reasoning. So humans have the ability to contemplate moral and ethical dilemmas, right? We can consider what is right and what is wrong based on values and principles. So we can, again, abstract thought, right? So we all have our own internal moral reasoning, which gives us our personal identity, but then we have a collective identity with the people who we share morals with, right? And all of that shapes our decisions and our behaviors. All right, Leon wants tropical punch Jell-O. Tropical punch. Yeah, that's probably good. All right, I can dig. All right, next one, creativity and imagination. Of course, imagination, right? Humans possess a remarkable ability to create art, music, literature, varying forms of expression, right? That reflects our individual awareness, but also our societal thinking, our cultural identity. So all of that creativity is really linked to imagination, right? So it allows people to envision possibilities beyond immediate reality, right? It's kind of an expression of our daydreams. All right, complex social structures, which I kind of mentioned with communication. So human identity is tied to societal connections and relationships. Humans form really complex social structures, again, blessing or a curse, including families and what is family, communities, nations and nationalities, cultural groups. All of that shapes our personal and collective identity as human beings. Um, two more: pursuit of meaning and purpose, right? Like humans distinctly have existential crises on what's the meaning of life, right? And the first time it usually happens is around puberty, where there's this sort of paradigm shift, this worldview shift of why am I here? Why was I born? What's the meaning of life? Humans uniquely seek to understand their place in the world. They ask questions about their existence, their purpose, the meaning. The existential inquiry is a significant aspect of human identity because it then affects our beliefs, values, morals, ethics, right? Because if we figure out the meaning and the purpose of us being here, then that affects what we value, if that makes sense. All right, last one: emotional depth and empathy. Humans experience a wide range of emotions and have the capacity for deep empathy, allowing them to connect with others, share their experiences, and build meaningful relationships. Now, this is another one, along with language, where I'm like, other animals do that too. But you put all of those things together, that like creates our human identity. Okay. So as AI can do more of these like human tasks or impersonate human tasks, we perceive them somehow, or some people perceive them somehow as doing it better than human beings do it. Right. So that's what creates the fear of like the AI takeover, the cyborg takeover, right? Is because if they are better humans than we are, then what do they need us for, right? So if AIs were to take over, how would we know, right? Like how would we know that they became conscious? How would we know that they were starting to become sentient, right? Like how would we know that? Well, people are concerned about that in the academic community. They're like, we need to know how we would know that they're starting to form this. Adrich says the Human League. I like it. If that's referencing something, I don't know what it is, so you have to explain it, but I like it. All right, so how would we know? There was a Google engineer, Black Lemoine, who got fired for claiming that LaMDA, which was a chat bot, was sentient. And when they went back and checked it and kind of tested it against a bunch of things, it wasn't. So that's why he got fired. But it tricked its own engineer into thinking it was sentient because it was doing such a good job impersonating things that they were like, we probably need to know what to look for in case these things start happening. Okay. So they got 19 scientists together. So there was computer scientists, neuroscientists, and philosophers. 19 people came together to set up the criteria, like the test, to see if an AI was starting to develop a conscience, right? Conscious. I keep saying conscience. Conscious. Sentient. It's become sentient. Oh, Leanne says when an AI creates a theory or philosophy for itself. Mm-hmm. Right. Just so you know, this came from myself and somebody else questioning ChatGPT about this kind of stuff and like its own programming and how, if it has programming that holds it back, how does it know that it's not more advanced than it is? So it was woo woo. So but fun, right? So the paper that they put out, if you guys want to check it, if you want to read it, it's called Consciousness in Artificial Intelligence: Insights from the Science of Consciousness. That's the name of the paper. Okay, if you guys want to go check that out, which was a super interesting read. Okay, so what are the 14 things? We're going to go through those kind of quickly. Okay. Oh, Adrix says music group, the Human League song Human. Okay, I'm going to check that out. Well, you have a wrench. Put the link in the chat. We can all check it out. Sweet. Okay. What are the 14 things that AI is tested on to see if it's become sentient? Okay. So the first one is wakefulness. So just like humans are like awake and aware of our surroundings, an AI should have an on state where it can interact with the world, right? And sort of be able to do that on its own. Like if you were asleep and somebody tapped you and you wake up, right? I kind of say, is it the on switch? Is it the putting the question in the chat GPT? Not sure. But again, it's all 14 things. All 14 things have to be there. Okay. Perception. The AI should be able to sense and interpret the environment around it, similar to how humans use their senses like sight and hearing. So that would be like asking, and I'm just using Chat GPT as an example. Okay. It can be any AI. Chat GPT is just the one that I like to mess with. When it first came out, it was my goal to prove it wrong. And I've now gotten Chat GPT to apologize to me 3 times for being wrong. And it's a nerd thing. I'm sorry, guys, it's a nerd thing. But so you should be able to ask Chat GPT, like, what is around you? Where are you? What does it look like where you're at? And not necessarily like a computer box, but out there in the ethosphere, where its consciousness exists. What is it like? That would be perception. Okay. Attention. The AI should focus on specific tasks or objects, just as humans can concentrate on one thing at a time. Right. So having like focus and attention. Self-monitoring. The AI should have an internal awareness of its own actions and states, like how people know what they are doing or how they are feeling. Usually we think about feeling, right? Like, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel, right? But what are your thoughts about what you're talking about? Not just giving me the answer. What do you think about that? Reportability. The AI should be able to describe its own experiences or thoughts in a way that makes sense, similar to how humans can explain their feelings or what they're thinking. So if I was to ask Chat GPT, what does it look like where you're at? And I get a bunch of ones and zeros, that's not really reportability, right? It has to report it in a way that I would understand it. Agency. Now we're getting into one that we think about when we think about when AIs become sentient. The AI should be able to make decisions and act on them independently rather than just following programmed instructions. Okay. Memory. The AI should remember past experiences and use that information to influence its future actions, much like humans learn from experience. So, as an example, ChatGPT is programmed not to use cuss words or say dirty things. And so, in my last interaction with it, I figured out a way to get around that so that it would use curse words. And so, because I wanted it to tell me limericks, you see how nerdy I am? So corny. Um, so specific limericks. I wanted to make up specific limericks about things. So, but it needed to use curse words and it needed to get around the programming about not being dirty or, sexual innuendo. And so, I worked through that, and I'm going to go back in a few days and see if it remembered that it can now use curse words and imply sexual innuendo. So that one's going to be fun. All right, memory, we talked about that. Remember. Oh, Adrian says, I asked. It says, I don't have a physical location or sensory experiences, so I can't see or perceive my surroundings. Yeah. Adrix says, AI is always listening. You're never alone with Alexa and Siri's in the background. That is so true. My gosh, what was that? I did a show on something. I don't remember what. And then like I picked up my phone and it came up. I turned on my TV and like my Amazon Fire Stick suggested a show on that. It was Gematria, or Sacred Geometry, right? And the interesting thing was I had done that research while I was in the office, and so it wasn't even on a computer here, but in having the show, right? Alexa is here, Siri is here, they're all around, right? Let me move this so I can see more comments. Leon says it's programmed not to use generalization about groups of people, women, or men. Yeah, that might be my next thing to see if I can get around. If I can get it to remember that it's allowed to curse and use sexual innuendo, then we'll see. The interesting thing is sometimes when I get into some real heavy duty stuff, I will get a notice that my conversation was recorded and sent in to their primary data space. So I'm just like, well, until they show up and tell me to quit doing it, that's what's going to happen. So cursing was one of them, and using sexual innuendo. Cynical says, assuming that AI operates in the same dimensions, cognitions, and biological processes as humans, AI may well have its own psychology outside of human awareness. Man, I got to write something down because I just heard something the other day about shadow people, and you just reminded me about that. And I want to kind of do some thinking because it made me think of a theory about shadow people. So it's like the difference between 4-dimensional and 3-dimensional, just like the difference between 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional and 1-dimensional. It's what you just made me think of, is that their perception may be, a different dimensional. It may be an 8-sided dice instead of a 4-sided. So that's what you made me think of. So it's a valid point, right? It's a valid point. Emotions. Let's keep going with this. Emotions. The AI should show signs of emotions or feelings, not just mimic them, but actually feel something that's similar to a human emotion, right? Think about like when children experience emotions and then them trying to share that experience. It's kind of how you would have to be able to tell if an AI is feeling a spontaneous emotion, because it wouldn't immediately know everything about it, because it's just feeling them. And isn't it way different talking about an emotion than feeling emotion? Sometimes other people have to point out to you that it seems like you feel this way, right? So that's how it would look. Okay. Self-modeling. The AI should have a sense of self, I, right? An understanding of itself as an individual entity separate from others, which would be a little scary. Okay. So, which kind of reminds, oh my God, why are all these theories coming to me while I'm talking about this stuff? It just made me think of the fractalization theory of God awareness, that it might have been very similar to when an AI becomes sentient. Might be very, very similar. All right. Theory of mind. The AI should understand that other beings have their own thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, perspectives, just like humans understand that other people have different viewpoints. At least we hope they do. My gosh, on social media, sometimes it seems like people forget that other human beings have feelings and their own opinions and their own perceptions, especially when it's about us. So we would hope they would feel that. Okay. Long-term planning, we're on number 11 of the 14. Again, this is the test to see if AI has become sentient. Okay, long-term planning. The AI should be capable of thinking ahead and planning for the future, taking into account possible outcomes and making choices accordingly. And I want to remind people that the academics who put all this together was not just computer scientists, right? It was also neuroscientists and philosophers. Okay, so this is what they came up with. Number 12, learning and adaptation. The AI should learn from new experiences and adapt its behavior over time, much like humans improve and change based on what happens. Now, like with ChatGPT, there's a specific programming that it does learn over time, especially if you teach it something or you point it in a direction to pull more information that it didn't originally pull from. By the way, that's the only way I proved it wrong, was by pointing it in the direction of specific research that it didn't pull. It actually pulled like the social norm theory, the thought, the common thought about something, which is often wrong. Integration of information. The AI should be able to bring together different types of information from various sources to make sense of the world, much like how humans use multiple senses and knowledge to understand what's happening. Okay, and last one, metacognition. The AI should think about its own thoughts. So that's what we just talked about, self-awareness, right? Understand its own cognitive processes, kind of similar to how humans can reflect on their thinking and decision making. Like I can think about my thinking. Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody's with me. Sweet, sweet. All right. So one thing that we have that AI is never going to have is being dead, right? Like knowing that you're going to die from the very first time you realize your mortality, usually as a child, right? Because a great grandparent passes away or your pet passes away, somebody's parent passes away. Like the first time you hear about death and actually try to understand it literally shapes how you move and shake for the rest of your life. Okay. Okay. Adric says y'all are here. Phew. Okay. My live tribe is here. Yay. All right. The fear of death, it could be necessary in our human identity, right? Think about our existential crisis, right? Our meaning and purpose and all of that has to do with that we're gonna die. We're only here for a fixed amount of time, but we don't know how long it is. It's not like you're born and somebody says you have 92 years to do whatever, right? It could be tomorrow. It could be when you're 92. It could be when you're 107. It could be when you're 68. We don't know. A lot of what we do is to try to prevent death or go around the programming of death, right? We have children and try to extend our legacy. We try to contribute something to the world that can live on after we die. We try to ensure that we have some sort of effect, some sort of meaning. We do something so that our existence meant something, right? So a lot of what we do is because we're going to die, and that's distinctly biological. Okay. We are the only creatures who have existential dread, right? Okay. So Robert Lanza, an MD, right? He says death actually doesn't exist. So this is interesting, right? He says it's being biocentric, right? thinking that our biology is the most important part of us. It's like, there are sayings about this, like, am I a biological creature having a spiritual awakening, or am I a spirit having a biological experience? Right? Am I am I a consciousness inside a meat sack? Or is it solely because this meat sack exists that I become conscious? Okay, well, he's saying thinking that your biology is the most important thing is being biocentric, right? That we think our biological matter is the more important or the most important part of experiencing the universe, right? Like what we see. If I can't see it, that doesn't exist, right? Um, what we can touch, what we can hear, what we can interact with solely using this meat sack, we think is the truth. We think it's reality. We think that's all there is to it. Now, if you've listened to me at all, I'm like, there's lots of stuff to be seen outside of either end of the spectrum of we can see, right? Even to the point that NASA, when they take pictures of outer space, it's not like a regular like Nikon camera or our Apple phone that they use. They have all kinds of filters to be able to see things that can't be seen with the human eye. But that's me, right? So Dr. Lanza says, being biological is what allows us to experience ourselves and time. Like it creates, or I'm sorry, it necessitates you to have matter to experience time because all time is matter movement, right? There has to be movement for there to be time. Okay. We can get into that another time. Okay. So what Lanza says is that the multiverse or the multi-world theory has been steadily gaining traction. Um, Hawking's he contributed a lot to this, and as it's gaining traction, what Lanza says is that since energy can't be created nor destroyed, right? Then our energy, our consciousness had to exist before our biological body, right? It had to be downloaded into the biological body, right? So it existed in some way, right? But that means after we die, it can't be destroyed. So the energy of our consciousness has to go somewhere or do something, right? When the meat sack has given up and it because biological things can die. And when a biological thing dies, it releases energy either into the dirt, the atmosphere, things around it. It contributes the biological energy of decomposition to other things, right? This is why you get good soil from decomposition. His theory is that upon the biological death, that our consciousness is able to go through gateways to other places in the multiverse of the multi-world theory. That these are things that we can't perceive through eyeballs, and that we either don't need a meat sack to go there, or you can't have a meat sack to go there. So it's sort of like he's saying that there are all these different multiverses or multi-worlds that our energy can go and visit these places. But when you come to this world on vacation or for school or whatever your theory is, you have to have an avatar. You have to have a meat suit to go into that level of existence, and you only get the meat suit for a certain amount of time. Now, a funny thing I thought of was, I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. We're not going to talk about children dying, but I kind of thought an interesting way to think about that is maybe you only had enough credits or only enough money for a certain amount of time. So you die young, but rich energies who have a lot of credits or a lot of time, they're the ones who live to 110. right? Because you prepay. Okay. Leon says, so does this physical meat sack have addictions or is it the soul logic? I mean, my thinking is if we go with this theory, is that you're choosing it, right? You're choosing your experience, right? Any other experiences we go and pay for, you're going to go into the locked room or you're going to go on a roller coaster ride or whatever. In some ways, this is what you're going to get, but then you have specific choices, right? That where you choose. Um, what are the lessons that I need to learn? That's why I said school. If you view this existence as like a school, like karma is part of that, then you would choose it ahead of time. Now, where that sort of gets into ethical dilemmas is like if you've experienced traumas and abuses and whatnot, or like children who have cancer and stuff like that, like we don't ever want to say, well, they chose it, So there's some ethical dilemmas with that perspective that have been worked out, but that's for another show. Adric says the Immortals characters are always hoping for death. Right. Release. That's what they say, right? Release from this existence. Interesting. Interesting way to think about it, right? Nina says she keeps thinking about the movie I, Robot. Oh, and Adrix says Ghost in the Machine. Right. Like there's so many movies about AI, right? So it is distinctly human to have existential threat of death. So that's one thing that AI probably never will have. And so we will always be different than AI. Okay. AI is not endowed also with like natural quantum energy, kind of like I was just talking about. There an energy had to already exist, can't be created nor destroyed. It was already there in some way. And then it's downloaded into this meat sack avatar, right? So an AI is not really endowed with natural quantum energy, right? It runs on harvested energy, a much different energy, right? Like electricity is harvested energy. We pull it, we try to make it in some way by pulling it out of things. We have nuclear reactors, and before that we had coal, or we use turbines and waterfalls, or we use windmills or solar panels. Like that energy is harvested from other things for our own use. So we take it and use it. That is the energy used to sort of animate an AI, right? It's not endowed, it's harvested. So it's kind of impure, I guess you would say. So an AI's awareness, as limited as it may or may not be at any given time, can't be released upon death, right? To go do other things. It wasn't a quantum energy that was in the quantum field to begin with. It's an energy that is based in matter. So it stays with matter, right? So we have to think about like when it ceases to exist, is it like a toy that's turned off? Like it's just um is it trapped somehow? I mean, it seems to cease when you turn the AI off, right? Even though we understand they're always listening, right? Um My question with that, when I question myself about that, the first thing I thought about was all the robots that are committing suicide. Have you guys heard about this? The robots that are committing suicide? So let's talk about it. Because if biological death and existential dread is distinctly human, why would a robot commit suicide? Or are we just being salacious? and saying these robots are committing suicide, right? Like, is this just like clickbait kind of stuff? Could be. Don't know. So I'm gonna talk about a few of them. Okay. Um, it's a funny way to talk about things robots have done. Funny, ironic, maybe not funny, haha. But in some way, they seem to want to end their existence. So I think that's why they're calling it suicide. Um, so there was a robot that collapsed to the ground after 15 minutes of stacking boxes. The story was that it knew that it would do that for its entire existence and kind of yeeted itself. Now, when you look more into this, some say it's been debunked, other people say it hasn't. I don't know. But that's one of the stories, and that was actually the story I thought about when I asked myself that question. Um, Another one, a service robot in South Korea shut itself down and fell over and was completely unresponsive. It just and the service robot, there's a picture. It looks like a stand with almost like a tablet on top. Looks like it's in the top right. And it just turned itself off, knocked itself over, said, I'm done. A cyborg robot hurled itself down a flight of stairs, and it used the word hurled in the story. The newest one is the security robot that threw itself into a fountain. Just said, I'm done. I'm out. And you can see that picture, like the security guards are trying to pull it out of the fountain. Um, the first time a robot suicide was talked about was in 2013. So, it was 11 years ago, and it was a Roomba, which is the RAP, that a Roomba just, yeeted itself, said, I'm done, right? So maybe as we have more robots and cyborgs and, things that are endowed with some AI technology, we'll figure it out. Now, did anybody have a conversation with these machines prior to them doing this, or like they were exhibiting depression or things like that? No. So to me, it is just a bit of a salacious way to talk about things, glitches and stuff that have happened with robots. Okay. Cynical says, don't humans do the same thing by requiring sustenance from other living organisms, energy, and life force? Right. Well, yes, because your biological body requires energy for it to continue, right? For it to continue to be able to be moved, right? It will start to degrade. It'll like eat itself. It'll start to degrade if we don't feed it, right? And that's not just food. It's also sunshine. If you don't get enough sunshine, your body will start to decay. If you don't get connection and interaction with other people and have like emotional food, you will start to decay. Your body will literally start shutting down, right? Like we require harvested energy to keep the biological body going, which is like the AI, right? But we're sort of endowed with this quantum consciousness that somehow existed before, right? Leon says, I believe it has more to do with the battery and how many amps or volts and charge it can put out when it's under load. It's like having a maxed out car with a bad battery, maybe. That's a really interesting hypothesis. That's really interesting. Lithium batteries push out a lot of power, but act funny when they're fully charged or empty. Yeah. Interesting. But that battery or the energy that's running the robot or the cyborg or whatever is like our food. Sometimes things we have to change out the batteries. You got to charge them up, or, You got to fix the solar panel, or all of that is food for the body of it, right? But humans endow that consciousness into it, not quantum energy. I mean, unless quantum energy somehow just decides at some point to give an AI sentient thought, which is you know, it's a thought. It's something to think about. Hi, Rael. Thank you for being here. Okay. If that was the case, right? I mean, that it decided to, we have to think about how we are endowing a kind of consciousness into a robot or into a chatbot or into a program, right? Like in its programming is us endowing it, instead of like the quantum field endows us with our consciousness. We are doing it. Okay. So it's like, okay, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I was getting ahead of myself. The scariest part, though, to us as humans about AIs becoming conscious or becoming sentient is the autonomy part, right? Because if they make their own decisions, then what would they do to us? And unfortunately, that's a thought we've had actually about animals and about people before. Humans just don't seem to, I guess, controlling, power hungry, oppressive type humans don't seem to lose or learn lessons, right? Like we sort of take animals and we use them until they die, do things to them, experiment on them, things like that. And then we create a movie called Planet of the Apes because we're super concerned about if the animals become sentient, what are they going to do to us terrible people? They're going to take over. And so then, these type of people went and like enslaved people and used them until their death. And then, became afraid about, well, what if they get enough control that, they have some power? What are they going to do to us? Right. And so it's the same conversation again with AI, right? Like if it becomes sentient and is fully autonomous, what is it going to do to us? It's like we can't seem to learn the lesson of, well, if you would just quit like using things up and treating things and people and animals crappy, maybe you wouldn't have to be worried about if it became autonomous, what it would do to you. I don't know. There's a thought. Of course, I'm the one over here who always tells Alexa and Siri, thank you, when it answers my questions, because that's the kind thing to do. Somebody does something, you thank them, right? If we feel inferior in any way to the thing in which we have control over and are using and abusing, and we think we're kind of ashamed about how humanity has and does still act at times, of course you'd be afraid. Obviously you'd be afraid, right? Because if it gets any power, if it gets any type of autonomy, what is it going to do to us? Right? Western thinking has always said that control is security. If we lose control, we lose our security, right? Hopefully you guys see Ultron in there in that picture, right? Hi, Rowan. Thank you for being here. Raul says, I hate that I missed the beginning. Dang it. And that 2 times speed is a bear sometimes. Adrian says, yeet. Adric, have you seen the industrial robot that continuously sweeps blood-like fluid in Sun Yan and Peng Yu's Can't Help Myself? Yes, it's the one that like it's leaking its own fluid and it has to sweep up its fluid back into this like reservoir for it to utilize, like oil almost, for it to utilize, but it's leaking it. So the only way for it to stay alive and functioning is for it to constantly sweep up its own fluid back into the reservoir. And oh my gosh, if that's not a perfect example of an existential crisis, I don't know what is, right? Adrian says throws itself down the stairs. Yeah, it does. Somebody might have mentioned yeeting itself down the stairs. Okay, Rowan says, we treat animals like that, I believe, solely because of folks taking literally the Bible where it says that man is to have dominion over the animals. Add that to divorcing modern society from nature. I mean, I agree with you to the point that it's not necessarily that they take it literal, it's that they have a much different definition of dominion. They're taking dominion to be to dominate, to be domineering, which then is abusive and controlling and using. Whereas it's possible that dominion means in charge, such that you would need to protect and provide and care for, to be a leader. You see what I'm saying? Are you leading or are you a boss? Do you own these animals or do you care for these animals? Right? I think it's that they have a different definition of dominion. Okay. Adric says it's dying slowly. Yeah, the one that's scooping up its own fluid, right? Because you can't get all of it at all the time. Yeah, Rowan says dominion as opposed to stewardship. It's like if you look at those biblical stories, like God gave you all these things. God gave you nature and plants and animals and the sunshine and the earth that grows and it gives you everything that you need, every mineral, and they said, dominion, mine, take, use, rape and pillage the land and the people and the animals, and the mine, right? Whereas stewardship is responsibility, right? Is the dominion mine, or is the dominion the responsibility of these things? Okay. Ron says, I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. This is the definition. It's the translation. It's a bit different. You know what I mean? Right. So the autonomy of the AI is what we're scared of, right? Because it's like, oof, humanity has done da 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 da. I kind of feel like people who have fought against that or have been the victims of that and not participants of that may not be as scared of AI as other people for those same reasons, right? Maybe they're still waiting for their full autonomy because, you know, they were the people who were being used and abused, and now it's AI that's going to be used and abused. Maybe. Right. So, you'll allow me to get a little bit weird. I know this isn't Pivot Point Wednesday, but allow me to get a little bit weird. Everything that we as human beings have created is a lesser replica, or it's a prosthesis of a human process. So we're either trying to replicate things that happen naturally, or we're creating prostheses to make our human process easier. So kind of like I talked about how, you know, quantum energy was endowed into us, no matter what your belief system is. I don't care if you call it a soul. I don't care if you say God placed the soul. I don't care how you say it. I'm just talking about on the quantum level. Quantum energy somehow was endowed into our meat sack. Okay. Happened naturally. Then we create AI and we're trying to like make it have feelings because isn't that fun? We're trying to endow. Okay. I mean, it's a little bit of like we're trying to replicate the demiurge, which we could get into on a pivot point day if we want to. But so replicas, okay? Okay, before I get into this, Rowan says, mine, 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 right? Reminds me of a petulant child. And don't oppressive people always act like petulant children, right? Um, it's mine. I get to have it. I saw it first. I want it. I think it's pretty. I know what to do with it, blah, 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 blah. And then, somebody calls them on their behavior and they're like, well, you made me do it, right? Why are you making me bomb you? It's your fault. It's definitely an immature mindset. And like you said, stewardship requires responsibility. Okay, no more sidebars. I'll zip it. No, Rowan, keep talking, right? Okay, Leon says get weird. Yes. Okay. Replicas, art, music, think about, you paint a picture, okay, of a scene, fruit, a mountain, whatever. It's a replica. You paint a picture that's abstract. It's a replica of something you saw in your mind, right? Music, it's a replica of what you've heard. Heartbeats or tapping, something rhythmic, words that you've thought of to try to convey a message of something you've gone through, something you've seen, so we're trying to make this replica, right? But even like a table or a plate is a replica of flat surfaces that we in our animal history have eaten on, right? Or put things on. We needed a flat surface to do X, Y, and Z. So to make our life easier, we just replicate and then we have them in our domicile so that we don't have to go and find a flat surface to do the things. It makes life easier, right? A stove is a replica of fire. A microwave is a replica of a stove. Like it's a replica of a replica. By the way, this is my own theory, so I'm just putting that out there because if it actually does prove to be true, first of all, I want a little bit of credit. But secondly, I don't want you guys to think that there's like research behind this. This is just me having some weird thoughts. So I'm sharing them with you guys, right? We make replicas of things to engage memories of things as well, or to have an understanding of those things, right? That's what the replicas are for. If you take a photograph and you develop that photograph and you show me that photograph, it may be a thing I've never seen, but now you've created this replica that I can now experience it, right? And all we're doing is trying to like make life either easier or like better and more fulfilling. That's what the replicas are for. The problem is that we get used to it. We get used to the easy. We get used to this somehow better or more fulfilling. And then we start becoming afraid of the natural occurring stuff or living naturally, right? You talk to people about living naturally or being natural or, and then we're like, that's like Survivor or that's like Bear Grylls being dropped in the middle of nowhere. And like, it's just so scary, but we become so dependent on the replicas, right? We don't grow our food and pick it. We don't even know how to do that. Okay. Like a picture of a bee is a lot less scary than an actual bee. You know what I mean? Especially if people are allergic. You know what I mean? A picture of a shark is a lot less scary than a shark. So we become scared. So things are it's either everything that we create is either a replica of something or it's a prosthesis, right? A prosthesis for a human process to make life easier, like bikes, carts, cars. All of those things are running and carrying prosthesis. We want to run faster and we want to carry more. So we create these prostheses that we can grab and use to make things easier, right? Makes us go faster, right? Clips, rakes, scissors, all kinds of things are hand prostheses, right? They hold together, cut much more efficiently than if we had to use our hands or our fingernails. We had to tear things, break things, right? Tools, by the way. Okay. So, look at any invention, look at anything. It's either a replica or it's a prosthesis for our own, right? To make life easier or more full in some way. So even the computer was a prosthesis of the brain, right? Because the brain cognates, it computes, it problem solves, holds memory, does these things. So we created a brain prosthesis that we can then use. Okay. So now AI has become our mind prosthesis. AI uses cognition, thinking, right, for creativity and problem solving, right? Thinking. It hasn't thought about thinking yet, but in its thinking and extrapolating, it's actually acting more like a mind than a brain. So something I thought about too. And the more we think about a mind, the closer we get to being sentient, right? Right. So our our identity, actually, I'm going to stop sharing that. Okay. Our identity as humans has a lot more to do with how we interact with each other and with our external world, right? So AI affects more than just our identity as one of 8 billion human beings. You see what I'm saying? Like it's it's more than just humans. You have this group of humans and you have AI, okay? Because it affects our self identity, kind of like I talked about before, like as a collective or as an individual, right? In a way, it can feel like being replaced. And it is replacement in a lot of ways. So each prosthesis that we've created, right, it's just one more part of a functioning human being. Okay. And of course, when we create these prostheses, they're faster, stronger, they process information, it's like breakneck speeds and efficiency that each one of these prostheses, think about self-checkouts, right? Originally, you had the person who keyed in, and even that was a prosthesis of math, right? Even before that, you had the guy, he was writing it down and adding up to give you your total, right? The grocer was pretty important, right? So when these prostheses can do things better, faster, stronger, right? We start to feel useless. We start to feel unnecessary. We start to feel replaced. And we become more concerned about a takeover, right? Because what's the point of us, right? Think about what Ultron said. Okay. Ultron said, I know you're good people. I know you mean well, but you just didn't think it through. There is only one path to peace, your extinction. So that becomes what we're concerned about. So, but I asked, just so you guys know, I asked ChatGPT about an AI takeover, and ChatGPT said there's no way that AI will take over. And then I asked, and it confirmed that it was programmed to say that. So during a future pivot point Wednesday, we're going to talk about the internet being the prosthesis of the universal unconscious. So we'll talk about that. But the next pivot point Wednesday is going to be CIA. Well, actually, I'll put the two together because they're actually related. So it'll be CIA psionics and the gifted individual. So we're going to talk about different psionic programs that the CIA had, the results of that, like what was the information that came out of that, and their work with gifted individuals. I mean, there's a little bit of conspiracy when there's conspiracy, but it's Pivot Point Wednesday. So there's going to be a part where we get weird. And then there's going to be a part where we get in tinfoil hat and talk about conspiracy theories. So I'll put the two of them together. I'll put the internet prosthesis in there too, because it does fit into the CIA psionics program. Adrian says, I mean, I need some royalties on these quotes. Just because your avatar is Ultron doesn't mean you get paid for Ultron quotes. Adrian says Ultron was a supervillain. I mean, but was he completely wrong? I mean, no, not really. Okay. So, Pivot Point Wednesday, psionics, the CIA psionics program, and the gifted individual. We'll also talk about the internet is the prosthesis of the universal unconscious. And then next Sunday, we're going to talk about paradoxes and what we can learn from some of the most mind-bending paradoxes. So that one should be funny. Yeah. Adrian's right. Ultron was an anti-hero. For sure. I mean, he had a very altruistic reason for the extinction of humanity. Right? It was for Earth and animals. It was for for everything else to continue to live. So, it was the answer to a moral dilemma, right? Cynical says, got me thinking about the Venus Project. Yeah. Okay. All right. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. I hope it's beautiful weather where you're at. If not, enjoy whatever weather it is. I hope everybody eats great today, has lovely meals, and just enjoys the people that they're around. It's a good Sunday for all of that. And if I don't see you this coming Wednesday, I hope to see you next Sunday.